Good morning and welcome. My name is Brandon Laws. I will be your moderator for today, and I'm here with Susie Weir. She's sitting right next to me, so we're going to be tag teaming this webinar, What People Want from Work, Survey Results and Action Items for Employers. So we're basically, in this entire webinar, we're going to go through the findings from our 2018 What People Want from Work survey. We've been doing it annually since 2016, and we're excited to share some of the trends and findings, and we're going to uncover and tell you all about what people are saying that they want from work. So before we dive into the content today, wanted to go over a couple housekeeping items, which I'll do that right now. So this is going to be a 45-minute webinar. We'll probably stick to about 30 minutes of presentation, and Susie and I will be co-presenting. So there'll be a lot of back and forth. You'll hear my voice quite a bit. You'll hear Susie quite a bit. And we'll do some Q&A at the end. But that doesn't mean you need to wait until the very end to ask a question. I'm sitting here monitoring the questions as we're speaking. So open up that GoToWebinar chat window and ask a question. Either we'll answer it in the moment if it's relevant, or we'll save it for the very end and we'll answer all the questions as they come through. Slides and recording will be available to attendees. So what happens is, somebody jumps on midway through or they have to bail. We'll make sure to get you the slides and recording in an email. And it usually is like 2-3 hours after the webinar takes place that we'll kick an email out to you. And you're welcome to share with your teams. That's what this is for. So if you do have to leave, totally understand that. But the slides and recording will be available for you. And if you want to get alerts about any events coming up, whether it's workshops, some of our new e-learning courses or new free webinars or podcasts or anything like that, go to our website. And two ways you could subscribe to our updates. Scroll about halfway through the homepage, enter your email address and name. You can subscribe that way, or even easier, we have a live chat. Enter your email right there, right on the homepage. It usually pops up as soon as you come on the website. Enter your email there, and you'll be able to get our updates right away. Okay. Housekeeping aside, wanted to do some quick introductions before we get into the content. My name is Brandon Laws. I'm the Director of Marketing at Xenium HR. I've been at Xenium for 10 years plus, and basically anything brand lead gen related. I host a lot of our webinars and will moderate those. I host our podcast called Transform Your Workplace. A lot of the emails and content that you see, a lot of it comes from my department. And I have my hand in that, and I love what I do, and I'm glad to be collaborating with Susie Weir here today. Susie, you want to jump in and tell people a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Quick intro. So I am the Vice President of People Development and Culture. I've been with Xenium. This is my 17th year. I am an HR professional by trade, but I've been doing the consulting work for, like I said, about 17 years. My passion is around helping people and employers develop to their potential and create great workplaces. And so my role here at Xenium primarily is to develop and deliver learning and development programs. I also do some leader coaching and some HR consulting projects focused on workplace culture and communication.
No matter what Susie would say, she could not say enough about herself. She's very modest and humble. She is super smart, and she's built a lot of our programs. If you've been to any of our workshops and attended webinars and things like that, and even taken our e-learning courses, she's built all that. So she's a huge asset to Xenium, and I'm excited to have you on the webinar today. Okay, so let's get into the content. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to tell you what this survey is all about. We're going to look at who took the survey, so the population demographics, and we'll give you the findings from the survey of 2018. We're just going to, for the purposes of this one, we're going to look at 2018, and then we're going to give you some action items. So what's great, you're going to hear all about this survey, what it was, what people said, and then we've basically boiled it down to a few action items, and we're going to give you those today. And then we'll hopefully have 10, 15 minutes. We'll talk about some Q&A. And so again, submit questions throughout the survey as the webinar is going. Submit a question, we'll answer it for you. Okay, so this survey, we started this, and I believe this was Susie's idea back in 2016. We basically created a survey asking people what do they want from work, and we have 20 questions, both quantitative, so number driven, and then the qualitative, which is the open-ended comments. And we wanted to figure out, we just wanted to ask people what do they want from work. And why we did this, we've been doing employee surveys for a lot of our clients over the years, and we felt like we wanted to basically build this free survey where it was anonymous, and employers could really ask their people what do they want out of their work, and then they can use that to really create a great workplace. And ultimately, that's what we're all about, is transforming workplaces. And how do you do that without knowing what your employees want? And so this is an avenue in which we felt that employers could really quickly get to the root of what makes their workplace special and what they could do to make it even better. So we've been, like I mentioned, we've been doing this since 2016. 2015 is shown up on the slide. That is an error on my part. This year, 2019, will be the 4th year we've been doing it. And at the very end of this presentation, you will see a link to be able to sign up, and we have signups open right away. So the special thing about this survey, we have all sizes of employers taking this survey across different industries, which is pretty representative of our client base for the most part, but
primarily local employers,
locally
employers. Based
yep,
employers.
Yep. So a lot of the content in this, the findings will be from Oregon employers. Mm-hmm. Okay, so real quick, demographics for this year, 1,274 employees took the survey. So that's what this data is made up of. 60 employers, 12 industries, 62% are in non-supervisory roles, 63% under the age of 44. So that's kind of who took the survey. If we look back at 2016 when we first did this, I think we had, it was 751 participants. So every year we've been basically building on this survey, and we have more and more data to show for it. Back in 2016, we had 40 employers take that survey. So it just kind of shows you where we've come from. Okay, so Susie's going to dive into some of the categories.
Here are some categories that we asked employees to evaluate their employers on. So obviously listed here are company leadership, supervisor communication support, collaboration, their workspace and physical environment, the workplace culture, compensation, which are more the monetary rewards, benefits and perks, and training and development. For 2019, we will be adding an 8th option, which is diversity and inclusion, which has become a very important and popular consideration for employers. So under each of these categories, there are a list of statements, positive statements, and the employees, as they're taking their survey, are asked to rate their employees based on each statement in these categories. So here are the results. This is from 2019 and how employees rated their employer. So on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 would be strongly disagree, all the way up to 5, strongly agree. The employees would provide their rating to each positive statement in each category. So for example, under company leadership, one of the statements listed is leadership communication is authentic and transparent. And they would provide their rating between 1 and 5. So looking at the overall results, you can see that looks like workspace and physical environment.
Yep.
Rated number 1.
Which is
interestingly
interesting.
Yeah.
But I think, as we'll see in this next slide, when you stack it up against the importance level, that workspace and physical environment maybe score high, but we'll see if the importance level is as high. So I think there's a couple components you want to look at when you look at these findings.
Yeah, interestingly too, you'll see compensation. There's some interesting information about compensation. I think historically in any survey, it's rated low. I think most people would like to make more money, but there is some other information in this survey which is helpful in understanding compensation.
Yep. Okay.
So then we wanted to know, okay, not only how are you rating your employer in each of these categories, but how important is this to you, right? And we were really interested in the delta, the biggest delta between right importance and current satisfaction. So again, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 would be very low level of importance to 5, very high level of importance. We asked employees to rate their employer in each category or each factor. So interestingly, when we're looking at the level of importance, workplace culture became the top item. The workspace and physical environment still up there, but workplace culture really stood out. And then interestingly, benefits and perks rated the lowest level of importance. Okay. And then as you can see, the largest delta is this difference in importance and then level of satisfaction under compensation. Okay. So that's definitely something to pay attention to. What we're seeing in research and in our experience working with clients is that some of this can be attributed to the slower wage growth over the past decade, which is now starting to shift with the pay equity initiatives and also the improvements in our economy. But there are a lot of younger folks who are in the workforce who have large student loans and debt that they're really focused on paying off so that they can put aside some money to buy a home and start a family. The Employee Benefit Research Institute out of Washington, D.C., interestingly, reports that most people are generally satisfied with their benefits, right? The basic benefit package. But they're seeing a long-term trend of people wanting fewer benefits and more cash. So I think that will be interesting to watch. I think that kind of, to me, reinforces what I hear about people wanting more control and flexibility in terms of right what they're spending their money on, right, for their benefits, also how they approach their work, right? So control and flexibility are common themes that you'll see come up quite a bit.
A lot of people who have taken this survey, so an employer would a lot of times come to us and say, okay, I've got these scores here and I've got these importance numbers. Like, what do I look at? Like, what am I supposed to do with it? And I think, Susie, you pointed out the biggest delta. So like compensation, for example, you have a 3.28 from a population standpoint, and then it's the second highest importance level. So if I was an employer and I got numbers that look like that, I would probably say compensation is probably the area I'm going to address first because it's important to the employees and it's the lowest rated. So I think if you're looking at scores, if you do participate next year, you get scores that look a lot like this. I'd probably focus on the biggest gaps between importance and the score. Would you agree with that?
I agree. That's how you prioritize your action items and your follow-up. And I'll give you some recommendations towards the end of the webinar. One thing to note, as you mentioned, Brandon, when employers get their results, you not only will see how your employee group rates you, right, and what's important to them, but you also have the ability to see the total survey population. So that gives you some insights into some trends, but probably more importantly, when you're looking at follow-up and action items, is looking at, okay, for our population, what's most important and what do I have the biggest opportunity to improve?
Great point. Okay, so we're going to get you guys involved in this. And one of the questions that we asked were, what are top factors that contribute your employees' engagement? So the way this question was asked, there was a list, and you see that the options from the survey on this left-hand side here. And these are the options we gave people. We asked them to rank their top 3. So every employee would get a chance to say what's most important to them for my engagement at work. So I'm going to throw this out to you guys. Everybody that's on the webinar, I want you to go to that chat window. I want you to guess, if you were to assume the top fact, you could just do 1, you could do the top 3, but I want you to choose from that list that we have up on screen and say this is what my group of employees would want to be most engaged. So I'll give you a minute or so, but I want to hear from you, and I'll share the results with people as we get people typing. Okay, see a couple coming in. I'll start reading some of these off. So some folks are saying, so Alana says, making a difference, job security, compensation. Got challenging work from Shannon. Heather, personal development, growth, recognition, flexible schedules. Job security from Jessica. That's a good one. We haven't seen too much of that, but it's been a common theme in the previous years, not so much recently. Team collaboration growth, Kate says that. Chris, positive relationships, making a difference, personal professional development. Phoebe, personal development, growth, or interesting work. Jean, making a difference. Cynthia, recognition. Okay, I'm not going to be able to catch up with all these, but I think what's interesting is that you guys know your workplaces better than anybody else, and you're probably spot on with some of those, but what's interesting is it's so vastly different employer to employer. So I'm going to actually show you what the results were from last year's, and it's been pretty consistent over the years. Would you agree, Susie?
Absolutely.
So the top three, compensation including benefits, flexible schedule, positive relationships. And that number that you see is the number of people that selected that as one of their top three factors. And so we basically just added them all up and then ranked them based on that. So in one form or another, in terms of order, the last few years have always been this three. I think maybe the first year we had job security in there.
Yeah, job security was much higher up in the list here back in 2016. Yeah. And I think that was kind of the sign of the times. But definitely the last couple of years, these top three have remained in the top three.
Yeah, compensation's always been at the very top. If I look at like the trends or just predict what the future will be, I believe compensation will probably still be up there, is my guess. But the notion of the flexible schedule, it's been talked about over and over again. And we've seen that in the comments, in the open-ended comments, people are selecting it. That's what they want. So pay attention to these because I think they're very important. And again, I'm going to toggle off the screen here in a second, but you will get the slides, so you'll be able to see these data points and take it back to your teams. Okay, so Susie, you're going to jump in here.
Yeah. So we also asked a couple open-ended questions, and the first was, what is the top reason? We were to narrow it down to the top reason that you stay in your current position. So what keeps you at your employer, at your workplace? This is a word cloud based on the top responses. So the top three themes, and I look at this as defining the employee experience. So when you're looking, many of you probably do client experience or NPS ratings or measurements. You can do the same thing internally, the employee experience. And I think it's really important to define and measure your employee experience. So in this particular survey, this last year, the top three themes were flexibility, the people, which are my coworkers, the team, and then learning and growth. Okay, that's what people are saying keeps them with their employer. So some things that came through in the comments under flexibility were 4-day work weeks, autonomy and control over not only my schedule, but how I do my work. Also under people, people talked about their coworkers, not only the relationships, but the quality of the talent and contributions. Family environment was cited a number of times, which speaks to the work environment and the culture. And there were numerous comments that included the word love, which obviously gets me warm and fuzzy. But, that's someone who has a strong emotional connection to work and likely has a high level of engagement. So comments like, I love my job. I love my coworkers. I love the work I do, the mission of my company or my organization, and the positive environment. So I would say if this shows up in, your team's results or your company's results too, these are things to capitalize on because they are definitely contributing to a positive employee experience.
Okay, so the other important question that we asked on an open-ended basis was, what is one thing your employer can do to improve your happiness and engagement at work? And my personal opinion, at the heart of the survey is really this question. This is, what are you not doing as an employer that you could do that's going to make me more engaged at work? And a lot of times, because we're kind of looking at the satisfaction numbers and whatnot, this is what it boils down to is, this is what I want. It's just one thing. You could probably do it. Make me more engaged and happy. So here's what we got. A lot of words, but the way I look at this is people want to grow. They want to be trained. They want on-the-job training. They want mentorship, and they want to do it so they can have goals to produce results in the organization so they can ultimately increase their pay and have opportunity in the future. When I look at these words and when I look through all the comments, that's ultimately what it boils down to. Is it's a path to more pay, more opportunity. They want to be able to contribute, and I think if employers are looking at ways that they can continue to grow their people from within, I think that's going to be a good opportunity for most of the people. A lot of the other comments that I continue to see over and over again is better communication from leadership to employees. It could be across teams as well. They want a stated vision. They want to know where the organization is going. They want to know what they believe in. I think people want to rally behind a vision and a mission, and they want to know that they're doing good in the community. So I think if you can verbally state what the organization believes, the better off you're going to be. People want recognition and feedback. I saw that time and time again. They want updated equipment and tools, and especially as this technology continues to get more and more advanced and ubiquitous, people want better tools to work within. And I think you should ask your employees what would make them more effective on the job, and if there's a tool or equipment that would make them better at their jobs or less frustrated throughout the workday, ask them that. And then ultimately, people want fairness in the organization. I saw that comment over and over again. Not shocked by it, but I'm surprised that's like the one thing people want was fairness.
Yeah,
so.
And in my experience, most employers don't intentionally go out to be unfair, but often there may be the perception of that because there's not clear communication. Or it could be consistent expectations across teams.
Yeah. Okay, so Susie's going to go through some action items for employers. This is ultimately when we look through everything, this is what it boils down to.
Okay, so what does this data tell us, and what can we do with it, right? What's the value here? One of the things, obviously, with compensation coming up loud and clear as important is to make sure that you have some structure in place. And we've talked about this on past webinars, especially in our pay equity. So it's not just about the compliance and equity side, but also having a clear and meaningful rewards program. So having some transparency around how pay is determined, right? So, being able to say that, hey, we obtain market data, we review it regularly to make sure that it's accurate. Our pay strategy, compensation strategy is to be at market, or maybe it's below market because we're offering these other benefits and perks, or maybe our strategy is to lead the market, but having some program in place so that you can share that. Also tying meaningful rewards to clear objectives. So Brandon mentioned, employees want to know, where is the organization going and what does it look like when we're achieving success. So making sure that you're able to set those clear objectives and tie the rewards to the achievement of those results. What I would recommend, when you get your results from this survey, is to get some additional feedback from employees. So it may even involve having some focus groups beyond the survey to find out, okay, where are the gaps in compensation and even benefits? Because it may be that there is a lack of understanding, which is creating a negative perception. So, usually it requires doing a little bit more deep dive work to understand where those gaps are before you formulate an action plan.
Before you move on, Suze, one of the things that has come up a lot recently is just this reinforcing that value of the total rewards package. I think employees may not understand all of what their employer is offering and what the cost of that is. Yeah. So showing a statement of some sort that shows salary, bonuses, commission, PTO, benefits, even employer taxes that aren't even like a SUTA, for example. Employees don't really understand all of that. So have you seen employers do something like that to communicate what their total package is?
So there's the total compensation statements. And now with our HRIS tools and technology, we're able to extract the data, all of the costs associated with all of the benefits and perks that are offered. And so you can create a total compensation statement and provide that to employees. Traditionally, employers who've done that, they've provided it at the end of the year. Some employees perceive that as, they're trying to show us how much money they're spending on us. So it can backfire in that sense. I've seen some other creative strategies where it's presented at the recruiting phase to say, look, here's our value proposition, and here's what you get in terms of total comp. One thing that we started doing is we realized internally that we don't do a great job of promoting and advertising all of our total rewards programs. And we have a ton of them. And so what we're doing is once a quarter at our all team meetings is doing a advertisement. And sometimes I put it into the form of a game, like a quiz competitive game. To help people understand, hey, we offer this for, this monetary benefit for sales referrals or employee recruiting referrals, or we have these education and learning and development benefits and programs, because it's easy to forget, right, that those are available. And if you're, not reviewing your handbook or, documentation, which most people don't, it's easy to forget that those are available.
To your point, we created a handout during the recruiting phase, and even for current employees to reinforce like everything that we're doing, like mentorship and community service and all these things. It's like I think it's a 1 or a 2 page document front back. But if you want an example to see what it looks like, just comment in the chat window. I want the employer branding handout from a perks and benefits standpoint, and I could show you an example what that looks like. All right, let's move on here.
So next is around communication. And so, employees, more so now than ever, because information is available at our fingertips, they want to know what's happening within the organization and where are we going? What's next? What's next for us as a team and an organization, but for me too. So having regular lines of communication from senior leadership to all employees and also from supervisor to employees is super important. So having some system where there's a regular cadence of communication. So one thing that I think has been very helpful for us internally, even as we've grown, is to have these monthly all hands, all staff meetings. And, it's just an opportunity to get everybody together in the same room and update people on what's happening, maybe some change initiatives that are underway. It could be our financial results for the quarter, for example, an opportunity for us to introduce new people who join the organization, talk about other opportunities like we talked about, total rewards, benefits, and perks. And we get continuous feedback that this is really important and valuable for employees to feel connected. The other critical thing is the relationship between the direct supervisor and the employee is probably one of the most important relationships, because that's going to have significant impact on that employee's experience. So how they feel supported and equipped to be able to do their best work, and also opportunities to talk about, okay, what's next for me, and what can I start doing to learn some new skills and advance myself in the organization. So regular opportunities to have career investment discussions, set goals, measure progress towards goals, get some coaching and feedback are really critical.
I could think of like employers who are maybe on here just saying like, oh, we have a distributed workforce, or so many people remote across different, like, how do you open up lines of communication that way? And I would encourage you to think outside the box a little bit. We were talking about all team meetings. Well, not everybody can go. So we're brainstorming on ways to, like, how do we broadcast this to people who they can't be there, they're on the road or something, to show video feeds so they can get the same information people who are there are getting, as well as like, okay, a lot of employers are using Slack or Microsoft Teams and things like that. There's probably ways to share either vision-based things or financial data or anything you want to share with employees. I think there's probably ways to use tools to distribute that out to people.
Yeah, I think technology is huge in this regard. So, you may not have all the resources that you'd like to have, but really getting creative and thinking, okay, how can we even do conference calls if we don't have video? Or how can we maybe record audio even, and distribute that to employees? I know with my remote employee, I do my one-on-one meetings via Teams video chat. And that's really important for our relationship. So I think as much as possible, looking at creative ways to leverage technology to make sure that all those folks still feel a connection to the workplace. Okay, flexibility. That, along with compensation, is one of the most important things to focus on, at least as we look at the total population results. So this is where employers are really, I think, being challenged and getting creative, and you have to figure out what fits best for your industry. I'm sure many of you have heard the story about the New Zealand firm they had about 250 employees across 16 different offices. Last year, they did an experiment where they offered their employees a 32-hour work week, but still with 40 hours of pay. And they ran the experiment and had 2 researchers study the effects. And the cool thing about the way they did it is they said, hey, we're going to try it out, and we're going to give you control over how you do your work. So if you want to participate in this 4-day work week, you work with your supervisor and your team to figure out how you're going to get your work done so that you can have that extra day off. And so the focus was more on deliverables and results. So negotiating those results between supervisor and employee versus the focus on the physical time at work. And interestingly, they found, which many of you heard, an increase in productivity, an increase in creativity, also attendance. And that came without a reduction in job performance or results. So something that I know a lot of employers are testing out and having some success with. Some other additional impact, which I thought was interesting, was decrease in utility costs. So I guess you don't have to have your lights on in the office if people aren't there. But also from just a community and sustainability standpoint, fewer cars on the road, fewer commuters. So, I think there are a number of benefits that can come out of employers looking at these flexible work options. Some of you may think, well, I'm in manufacturing, or I'm in the type of industry where we just don't have a lot of options. Well, I would encourage you to, think a little bit more outside of the box. There's flexible schedules that can be offered in those environments. So where you're allowing employees to choose their start time, maybe they have to get their kids to school. And so, you can start at 6, 7, or 8, right? Creating different start times and end times. Compressed work weeks, that's currently being done. Also a split shift option. So they get a break. Shift swapping between employees, so to have some flexibility to take care of personal needs. So setting up some really clear expectations and parameters are important there in terms of notification and follow through. But these are the things that some manufacturing employers are seriously looking at, especially, with the talent challenges. Due to low unemployment and not as many skilled workers available, but also just those employers who are really passionate about having a great employee experience.
I think we're entering the time where people want to do their work when they want to do it, where they want to do it. And I know you were talking about manufacturing. I think you just need to come up with some ideas for flexibility there. But I think most of these white collar organizations where you can pretty much do work anywhere. What's the point of having a button seat if the results are what really matters? So I think there's a lot of ideas you can come up with. I've even heard, somebody having a laptop versus a desktop computer where they could go to Starbucks if they wanted to. That, in their mind, that was flexibility.
Yeah.
It wasn't 4-day work week. It wasn't. So I think there's so many options out there. You just got to ask people what they want.
Yeah, and I think, people want to have meaning and connection, and they don't want to stay stagnant. I think of Daniel Pink, his book Drive, all of that is still so true to me, that people want to advance their skills and do something worthwhile. They also want control and flexibility, but they also need to be connected to people. And I think what employers are going to have to challenge themselves to do more and more is, how can we treat employees like adults, right?
They are adults.
And say, right, and be less dictatorial around how work is done, and say, okay, let's negotiate and agree on what the desired outcome is of your role. What are the results?
Yep. Having
those clear goals and measurements, and then having some accountability around that is going to be more and more important. And I think more of what people want, because they want to be trusted to do their job, and they want accountability too. It's not that they're trying to skirt the responsibilities.
Yeah, if you're on this webinar right now and you need some convincing, go listen to this podcast I did with the author of Why Work Sucks. And she talks about the results-oriented work environment, where she basically makes the case that it shouldn't matter whether they're in the office, breathing your office air for 8-hour shifts at a time. It matters, did they get the job done, and was it good? Anyways, I'll leave you with that, but go search that podcast. It was a great one.
So what's our bonus action item here? So we are opening up the 2019 registration for the What People Want from Work survey right now. So you can sign up for the 2019 survey to participate. It is free. This is really great because you get all this data for your organization for free. And we do all the work for you. We will send you a link with instructions to distribute to your employees within a week of signing up. And we do all of the back end administration of the results and reports, and you'll get a report in October. There are options to buy up. If you want some more data analysis, then certainly we can help you with that. But the base level report is super exceptional and gives you some real tangible results to do some planning and follow up with.
Okay, we've got about 5 minutes. I'm going to open it up for Q&A. As people are submitting questions, I wanted to remind you that we have the slides and recording that will be available following the webinar. So you could share with your team and talk about it as a group. I think it would be very important to do that. Okay, Susie, I want to ask you first question here. If you were participating in a survey like this and you had a bunch of data, what do you do with the results afterwards?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about that as we were looking at the 2019 results, but um, the most important thing, and we talk to our clients about this, and I think many people, especially you HR folks out there, know this to be true. If you're going to solicit input from your employees, you need to follow up with some results, right? This is the opportunity to build trust and credibility with your employees. So let them know that you'll be following up with some summary of results and commit to doing that. So when you get your report, you can decide if you want to share the whole report or part of the report, but you need to share something so they can see, okay, my input matters. The second part of that is establish at least one action item, one thing that you can respond to based on your employee feedback. So usually when I'm looking at any type of results, I like to put it into two buckets. So one is, okay, what are we doing well, right? That we want to capitalize on. Right? Let's be really intentional about that and focus on that and decide how are we going to do that on an ongoing basis. The second bucket is what is our largest opportunity to improve the employee experience. And that could be based on that one slide where we looked at the delta between importance and current satisfaction. It may involve doing, like I said, a little bit more focus group work or getting some additional feedback from some of the members or a cross-functional group of your team. But committing to at least one action item for an improvement.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've done over the years is we would, in an all team meeting, say what those action items are going to be. Like, here are the results. Here's what we're going to take away from it. Here's what we're committed to doing. And then check in with people about halfway through the year. I think that's something that I know when we have strategic goals, you guys are really good about that quarterly. Like, hey, here's a quick update. Here's where we're at. Here's who's leading on these things. That's really important because I think once you did it, you rolled it out and say, here's what we're going to do. And then you didn't hear anything. You didn't see any change. Probably be asking questions like, what's going on?
Yeah, the follow-up, just like in performance management, having those regular opportunities to measure progress and exchange feedback are really important. The other thing you can do, this can be a metric for you, for your employee experience initiative. So, we do ask a question. We didn't mention it earlier, but there is an employee NPS question. So employees are asked, okay, on a scale of 4 stars, how likely are you to recommend your employer? Okay. So, your goal may be 4 stars, right? The top, right? Or maybe, last year we had 2, this year we want to get to 3, right? Or you may look at the score, right? The scores of those different factors, compensation, leadership, work environment, and try and move the needle, set some initiatives to move those scores up. So you can use the data and create some measurable results for your employee initiatives as well.
Yeah. Oh, time for a couple more questions, but I do want to put our contact information up on the screen so you have that. Reach out to Susie or myself if you have any questions about the survey or anything else. And then our free resources, make sure and go follow us on social media, get updates as they come out, and then free resources like podcasts and webinars and things like that. Okay, so I love this next question. I liken it to the same reason I wouldn't go get an annual physical is because I don't want to know if I'm going to have some health problems. So why would a leader, so if a leader's saying, I fear what's coming out of this survey, I don't want to participate for that very reason. I'm afraid of what employees are going to say. What do you say to that?
Yeah, well, I'm not a good person to ask that question to because I like to have control over my destiny. So I want to know because knowledge gives me power to do something about it, right? So otherwise you're just guessing and you could be spending a lot of time, money, and effort on things, benefits, for example, that have no meaning or value to your employees. So you could be offering some expensive holiday party or some year-end bonus
that don't even care.
They're not having any behavioral impact on performance or whether or not someone stays with you. So again, I would do your best to approach it with a growth mindset
Mm-hmm.
and know that, hey, this is information. I'm going to take it as information. And again, don't worry about addressing every opportunity for improvement, but be really focused on, okay, here is the top priority, and we're going to focus on this one thing. We're going to commit to it, and do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love this question from Diane, particularly because I know how leadership or business owners or an executive mind kind of works. And a lot of times they think of like in directing resources. And I would say, like, if you're having a hard time getting your leadership around
Mm-hmm.
this survey, make it an economic thing to say,
Yes.
hey, look, by knowing, we're able to direct resources a lot faster. Because you made a good point, Susie, that we could be doing the holiday party that costs 30 grand a year or whatever, and it's not making an impact on engagement. Whereas if we allocate, $1,000 towards paying off somebody's loan, school loans or something like that, or pedometers for everybody, or whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
you're able to get to engagement faster and probably
Yes.
spend a lot less money and don't waste time.
Yeah, and I would say any executive that you talk to is concerned about acquiring and keeping talent because they know the impact to the bottom line. So, if you're an HR person and you're trying to sell this to your executives, if you can show them that, hey, this data is going to help us, right, improve our talent acquisition, right, be better in a better position to attract people or to keep people, right? Maybe another metric you're looking at is your employee retention. And so this survey is another data point to help you formulate your HR initiatives so that hopefully you can move that needle of that retention number. And again, the survey is free, so that's always a selling point. But I know time it is a resource and a factor too. But this is one great data point in addition to stay interviews, exit interviews, informal conversations or focus groups with employees that can really help you get clear on, okay, what specifically can we do to increase our chances of keeping our top talent versus them being enticed, by some other organization. And that does definitely tie down to the bottom line.
Okay, that about does it for us. We're at our time. If you're not taking anything away from this except for one point, the point is sign up for the 2019 What People Want from Work survey. I put the link back up on the screen. This survey, we do all the work for you, and it's going to help you open up lines of communication between your leadership, your employees. You'll figure out what they want from work. You'll be able to develop action plan around those results, and you're going to have a better workforce for it. So thanks for joining us for today's webinar. Susie, it was a lot of fun doing this with you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks.